Well, welcome to the New Kind of Man podcast. We have Larry Hagner on today. He's doing a phenomenal work for men with men and dads. Larry, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, brother. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I was really glad we got this set up, and I just want to say kudos to you. I have absorbed and then put into practice many of the things that you talk about on your podcast, and the Dad Edge podcast is really, really helpful. You guys have so many different shows out there and then topics. So, men, if you're listening to this, I would not blame you at all if you pause this and then go listen to Larry's podcast. He's got gold there, but I believe we're gonna refine some things and find some gold in this conversation too. So, Larry, if you could give me just a little bit of information and the audience just a little information about you and where you are and your stage of life.
So, man, wow. So I'm a father of 4 boys. I should probably learn their names at this point. I always get them confused. Like I'm always like, so it's Ethan, Mason, Lawson, Colton, and I'm always calling them by the different names. Like I'm like, Mason. So yeah, there's a lot of them. We also have a dog. I have a wife that I've been married to for 16 years. I've known her for 23 years.
Rock on.
Yeah. She's the light of my life. I'm the founder of Good Dad Project, also Dad Edge podcast. I guess you could say I'm the chief facilitator over at the Dad Edge Alliance Mastermind community, which is our mastermind for fathers and husbands and men and all that good stuff. I am not only the founder of this, but I am also the first one in line as a student, always asking for help, always asking for insight. I definitely view myself as a lifelong learner. I don't have it figured out, not even close. But the one thing that I'm here to do is to positively disrupt this generation of fathers and men to step into their greatest, most fulfilling life. And another tagline that we've been using quite a bit is, the definition of hell is meeting the man that you could have been when you're lying on your deathbed. And my goal is for every man that we can touch in some way, shape, or form, whether that's you're a podcast listener, whether that's you're a masterminder, or you see things or hear things or do things, as something else has helped you to pivot, is that when that time comes for you, you're actually looking in a mirror and you're not looking at that man you could have been.
Yeah, that is solid. Well, you're a high level guy. I mean, you're helping to manage certainly at some point all the masterminds, and how many you have hundreds of guys in your mastermind groups, right?
We do. We have about 375 guys that do life with us on a daily, weekly, monthly basis.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So you're a high level guy, and I was just wondering what got you into the Good Dad Project. I love people's stories. I think that people's the background, as much as you'll allow us to get in this time, I think that allows all of us to kind of appreciate the journey, but then also maybe inspire some other men who are on the ropes, so to speak, and they need a new way, and maybe they're the next Larry Hagner up the road, or the next Chad Zook up the road, just to inspire them to continue to change.
Yeah. So as far as my start in this, it really came out of complete and total struggle.
Hmm.
I was so my childhood was a bit crazy, to say the least. I don't share that out of pity and just give you some context. My mom was married 3 times when I was growing up. She dated several men in between. Every guy that she was with had some sort of male toxicity, whether that be alcohol or I can't confirm or deny that there was ever substance going on. I don't know. I have no clue. All I know is it was a bit chaotic. There's a lot of yelling, a lot of screaming. There were some good times too, but a lot of yelling, a lot of screaming, a lot of hitting, that kind of thing. And my it all started with my mom was married to my biological father, 1971. I was born in 75. He and my mother had a pretty bad divorce,
Hmm.
and what happened after that is they parted ways, and I never knew him ever. And I had no recollection of him. My mom then got remarried when I was 5. That man adopted me, and what was really cool out of that relationship is I didn't remember my biological father. In fact, at that point, like, I thought women just go out and find dads. Like, I thought that was the way of it.
Mm.
And when my mom got remarried at the age of 5, I was like, awesome, we found our dad. So we're good for our family again. This is cool. And they were married for 5 years until I was 10. And every year they were married, their relationship just deteriorated more and more. In my mom's defense, I think I don't know if she loved him or not. I mean, I think she did. There were probably parts of him that she loved, but I think she really did it out of a really good intention, that she probably wanted a complete family, and
Mm-hmm.
she wanted a father for me. So she married him, and I think that came back to bite the relationship a little bit.
Mm.
They got divorced when I was 10. He left. I've never seen him since. That was hard, right? Started
Yeah.
asking a lot of questions about where did I come from. Found out I had a biological father. Had a lot of questions, a lot of curiosity, and then a couple of years later, when I was 12, I had an opportunity to meet him,
Wow.
which I did, and it was cool. And at the time, he was remarried, and he had a 2-year-old son. He had another one on the way, and we hung out. It was cool. Like, I was like, man, this is really cool. Like, it's my father again. Like, I called him dad right away, which, looking
Mm.
back on it, is super awkward, right? Called him dad right away, but I so wanted that relationship to work out, and it didn't.
Mm.
We hung out for a handful of months. I don't remember if it was 3 months, 6 months, maybe 7. I don't know. I don't remember. But that relationship ended with us going our separate ways, and that about killed me.
Oh man, to go from that longing just for a dad for all those years, and then to have it in the interim, you're thinking that it's going to be, this is the one, finally what I want, and then that short time, and then parting ways. Wow, what happened after that?
So what happened after that was, I just fell into a hole, an emotional hole, where I just kind of gave up, I think, on a lot of things. I gave up on school. I overate. I emotionally overate. I got really
Mm.
heavy. I was the fat kid. And I just sort of gave up. I stopped. I mean, my 8th grade year, I got straight Fs. I had to repeat the 8th grade. And I did repeat the 8th grade. That sucked. But
Mm.
it was really a pivotal moment for me, because it really got my life back in the right direction. Switched schools, was in a better environment, kind of got over the fact that, I'd kind of lost my biological father once, lost my stepdad, then lost my biological father again. Um, can you edit this by chance?
I can, yeah.
Okay. The reason I ask is because my wife literally just had to leave emergently to go pick up my 6-year-old from school because he's got a fever. And my 3-year-old just pulled up. So that was her asking me, like, hey, can you grab Colton when he comes to the door? But I can grab him, and then I can put him in front of a show while we record. But
Cool.
can you edit this part? Is that okay?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Just give me like 4 or 5 minutes real quick.
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
Okay, I'm so sorry about that. He had just pulled up, and before he came in the house, my wife was still out there, so she's gonna take him with her.
Oh, gotcha. Gotcha.
Um,
Hey, priority, man. Family
yeah,
first.
yeah. Um, so you want me just to go ahead and kind of start where I was?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, Let me think. So after I, got done repeating the 8th grade, that was really a pivotal moment for me. It got me in a better school, better situation, better environment. and I went in a different direction. My mom continued to date, and every guy, man, like she was with one guy from the time I was 15 to 17. And this guy was an absolute, like, your worst nightmare.
Wow.
Like, severe alcoholism. You know, their relationship was just, it was one for the history books. Like, it was just so chaotic. I remember like leaving, you know, my house and staying at friends' houses for days. And I wouldn't like purposely stay for days. I would just like, oh, I spent the night, and then the next day I was supposed to go home, and man, I just really didn't want to go home. And so, you know, fast forward a few years later, you know, I got through high school, got through college, moved out, and then fast forward till I was 30. I know I'm skipping a lot, but that's where kind of this whole story takes a turn.
Mm-hmm.
So 30 years old, I was married, working, had my first son on the way. I was in a Starbucks here in St. Louis, sitting there and sipping on my favorite cup of coffee. And who comes walking in the door? But it was my father, my biological,
Wow.
my biological father, the one, uh, my real father. And we ended up talking, connecting, and here we are 15 years later. Um, I wouldn't, I wouldn't call it a father-son relationship so much. I'd probably call it a friendship,
Mm.
but it is what it is. I enjoy the dynamics of what it is. And, you know, we've kind of put the past behind us, and we're just on to enjoying the future. So he's still married to the same woman that he was with when I was 12. They've been married for 40 something years. And I have two younger half brothers. I have two half nephews, and it's pretty good.
Mm.
The one thing I can tell you though is, growing up like that, I struggled terribly the first 6 years of my kid's life. So I have a 13-year-old and 12-year-old. They were 6 and 4. And that's when I finally just had a wake up call. I was your typical guy, like I probably 98% of men out there, right? That
Mm.
living a life of quiet desperation, where I didn't have a whole lot of patience at home with my kids because I didn't really know how to father them. I didn't know what I was doing. I think that speaks to a lot of the men here.
Yeah.
I wanted to enjoy it, and I did enjoy several aspects of it, but I didn't intend for it to be as hard as it was. And I constantly I was my own worst critic. I just beat myself up. You know, I should be better. I should be a better father. I should do this, should do that. And same thing with being married. I probably was showing up 30% of what I am now. And it just was simply, I just didn't know how to do it. And every day was the same. Go to work, you know, I was really good at my job, constantly being promoted, you know, made great money. And I was in a great space, you know, it's like, that's where I got all my attaboys. So that's where I spent most of my time.
That's what guys do, right?
That's what men do. And it wasn't until I had a really bad dark moment with my 4-year-old, who's 12 now. He stepped out of line. I spanked him. He hit the ground. I hit him that hard.
Mm.
And I remember like, it surprised me that I hit him that hard and he fell. And then I went to pick him up and he shuddered in fear.
Mm.
And I looked at him and I saw me, you know,
Yeah.
being at the hand and the mercy of whoever my mom was with, who was deciding to take his anger out on me. And every bit of me that was like, always said to myself, I was never going to do this. And here I am doing it. I'm failing. And it was that night. I call that my Jerry Maguire moment. You know, it was dark. It was late.
Mm-hmm.
I was in my office, and I started Good Dad Project on as a Facebook page. And the page wasn't supposed to be anything more than a public accountability of me learning something. And that was the surrender. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do this. I'm tired of not knowing how to do this. And I want to learn. Just as I learned everything in school, I learned my job, I learned how to have a successful career. Why can't I take that same drive and that same mentality towards this and treat it as a skill, sharpen
Yeah.
it, and be a student of it? Like, nothing's wrong with that. So that's
Mm.
what I did. And then, you know, I'll go through this last part really quickly. Uh, 2013, started the blog. Organizations asked me to start speaking, which I was like, what do you want me to speak on? I don't know what I'm doing. And then 2015, I started the podcast. I launched my first book, Dad Edge. And the podcast is 5 years old this year. We've got a thriving mastermind of, 300, almost 400 men. And we're serving those same men now. And I would say 98% of the men that we serve in that mastermind were that none of them are in a dark place. In fact, they all have good lives. We've all been in dark places somewhere along the line, but for the most part, I think most men have pretty good lives, but we don't want to live a good life. We want to live an incredible, epic, amazing, fulfilled life where when we're on our deathbed, we can smile and say, hey, I wouldn't have done it any other way.
Yeah.
Had the relationships I wanted, the marriage that I wanted, my kids, the connection that I wanted. And I got the work that made me come alive. And I took care of myself along the way to make sure that I showed up as best I could.
Yeah. Well, and we're going to get to that too, because I think the five dimensions that you talk about in your work are instrumental into accomplishing the things that you have really been able to go through. And I think it's amazing how you see somebody who's endured such pain, and then they get to the point of surrender. And ultimately, this is the place. And man, if you're out there listening, like, don't just dismiss what Larry said. He talked about surrender, and ultimately he changed directions. He was living his life in a certain way, and he knew that was a dead end. So he turned around so he could become the dad that he is and the man that he wanted to be, which is profound. Let's get into some things that are less profound for a minute. We got into the weeds really quick, and I know that's part of your story. I love that. We're gonna drop back just a little bit. All right. So you live in St. Louis. That's what you said, right?
I do live in St. Louis. I live in the Lou.
All right. Well, I'm going to ask you maybe one of the most important questions I'm going to ask in this podcast interview. Are you a Cardinals fan?
I mean, you kind of have to be, otherwise they ask you to leave.
That's true. That's true. I mean, it was even so much because I grew up in Illinois, it radiated all the way over there. And I could either be a Cubs fan, which who would want to be that, or a Cardinals fan, which of course I chose that route. So that's really good. So, all right, Cardinals fan. So now we're into the Fast Five. Let me ask you this. So when we lived in Illinois, there was this amazing place, and I'm sure you've taken your kids there probably a bunch of times. If not, you need to really soon. But have you taken your kids to the City Museum?
We actually have kind of a funny story. We actually had one of our very first Good Dad Project, Dad Edge, or whatever, dad meetups there with their kids.
Really?
This was before, I think this was even before the podcast, or it might have been right in that. It might have been right when we started it. But anyway, yeah, we had like 15 guys out, and the whole day was like, come out and play. Like
Sure,
City Museum is a giant playground.
yeah.
And one of our guys who was with us lost I think his kid was 8 at the time. We lost him for like 45 minutes. We were in a panic. Like we thought he had been taken. It
Wow.
was crazy.
Where was he?
Yeah, he was just walking around.
Well,
And if you've never been to St. Louis, for you guys in the audience, man, the City Museum's huge. It's several levels, and it used to be a vacant building, and now it's like this several different floors and levels of like giant play area, interconnected,
secret
climbing, and
passageways.
yeah.
I mean, it's so cool.
I mean, you could, if you really want to get away from your parents and play hide and seek, like you could be lost in there for a week.
Yeah, it's
So
amazing.
yeah.
I figured you had taken your kids there. So, all right. So you're a fit guy, and I know that you're a fit guy. You did the 75 hard, and you made everybody feel bad by putting those pictures online. I want to thank you for that, Larry.
No problem.
And way to contribute to my guilt. And so, and I know that, and now you're eating a plant-based diet, but I know that everybody has a guilty pleasure. What is one of yours? Guilty
Sushi.
pleasure food? Sushi.
Sushi,
Nice.
man. Like, dude, sushi is I could eat so many of those rolls, man.
Yeah.
It's not even funny. Like, it's just not funny. Like I could like when I have sushi, and donuts are another big one. I mean, anything chocolate I could eat. Uh Pizza, cheese raviolis, man. Oh, yeah. I'm going to go eat right now. All right. We're going to have to pause this. I'm going to come back after I devour some serious food.
That's right. You have some ravioli sauce all over you. All right. All right. No evidence. All right. So I've been to the Arch many times. I'm not going to give you my judgment. Is the Arch overrated? Yes or no?
I mean, a little, right? I mean, because you go up there, you're like, oh, all right, cool. And then you're back down again. But
Yeah.
it's like if you're here in St. Louis, I think it's something you got to experience the Arch if you've never been in it. You got to go experience either a Blues game or a Cardinal game.
Right.
Super fun. Go down to Ballpark Village where they have like it's a mecca of like where you can watch the game or any sports. Like it's so cool. That's a good one. I mean, axe throwing is like a really big thing here now as well.
Mm-hmm.
And barbecue. You've got to get St. Louis barbecue.
Well, we're not going to get a debate on what the best barbecue is. We just can't. I live in Georgia. I'm stuck between people telling me there's Alabama barbecue, there's Kansas City barbecue, which I'm acquainted with. There's South Carolina barbecue. There's people, I don't know. There's barbecue everywhere. I think I like it all. So what is your favorite dude movie?
300.
Oh yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
And that's why you see this logo in the background.
That's exactly right.
The logo has quite a bit of meaning behind it. And I'm happy to go into it if you want about what we do and why we do it.
Yeah, go ahead. Shoot.
Yeah. So the Dad Edge, it's a Spartan shield. And the reason that I chose that Spartan shield is because if you look at the history of the Spartans and what they did, how they fought, what their society was like, I mean, I could go into detail, but I won't for the sake of time. But basically what it boils down to is the reason the Spartans were successful in battle and they were successful in the society that they created is because they challenged the status quo and they did things very, very different. And they relentlessly never quit. Not to mention the fact that they had a very different fighting style. So their shields were made of metal. Their spears were engineered very, very differently. And the way they fought is every shield overlapped. It was either the man to the right or the left. I don't know. It really doesn't matter, but it overlapped slightly to create a wall that was basically impenetrable. And every man to the side of them was responsible for protecting the other man. Mm-hmm. And for that reason, they were one of the most successful, warriors on the planet. The reason that we chose the Spartan shield as our logo is because that's exactly the way we view our community. Our goal is to positively disrupt this generation of fathers so that they can live a life of fulfillment, unlock this life of fulfillment, enjoy fatherhood, enjoy being a husband, enjoy being a provider, and enjoy the journey along the way. And we do it very, very differently. And we do it very effectively. And it doesn't take rocket science to really understand or to do what it is that we do on a daily basis to do these things. It just takes you having the courage to step into it. And as far as having each other's back, in our mastermind, we have men literally who talk to each other on Zoom calls that's facilitated by our leadership group from across the planet. Everything from New Zealand, Japan, Australia, the US, Canada, Scotland, Ireland, the UK, South Africa, everything in between, where men can actually, number one, share wins, share where they're doing well, because we're like, hey man, if you're winning somewhere, tell us so we can replicate.
Absolutely.
But also wherever you're struggling or wherever you're at a crossroads, tell us, because we have your back. And this goes for any human being, not just men and fathers and husbands, but anytime you are so emotionally vested into something that it is that you're going through, be it my wife and I aren't communicating right now as well as I'd like. I don't know really exactly how to do that. So usually when a man's going through that is like, we don't communicate like we used to. I wish it was the way it was before. What am I doing wrong? Like all these questions that don't bring about any good solutions. In fact, all it does is make them focus on the problem. Mm-hmm. So when you're around like-minded men that aren't going to say, "Hey man, how's work? Good. How are the kids? Fine." And that's the extent of your conversation. When you say, "Hey man, like my wife and I really aren't communicating like we normally are. I don't know what the problem is." Like, well, hey, well, what kind of, tell us, number one, what's the communication like now? What types of questions are you coming to the conversations with? Are you coming to the conversation with an agenda?
Mm,
Are you coming to the conversation with appreciation and curiosity? When was the last time you took her out on a date? When was the last time, instead of asking, "How was your day? Good and fine," you said, "Hey, what was the best part of your day? And why?" Or what was the most challenging part of your day and how'd you overcome it? Or, "I can see that you're frustrated with the kids. How can I best support you right now?" Things like that, that are very simple but not easy, because we usually don't know it because it's our default to not know it,
mm-hmm.
can make all the difference in the world. And when you have just our normal brains that are thinking like, "I just got to fix this communication thing," it's never going to get you there.
Yeah,
But
it's a bunch of
men,
circular reasoning. We just, if we start to think about it and we dwell upon it, and then it's like we get trapped on our own thoughts, and then we end up in the exact same place that we began.
totally, totally, yeah.
And yeah, I totally see that, and I love what you just added too, because it just, for all of us guys, we need that. We need that sounding board, that person we can go to, or those people we can talk to when something's going on. Hey, this is what's going on. I know that there's a problem, but I don't know what the problem is. Help me diagnose the problem. I mean, we do this with our car, right? Or truck or something else that we work on. It's like, hey, I have this problem. And maybe, we would go to another guy and say, hey, my truck sounds like this, or my car's doing this, or maybe a guy's doing some sort of woodworking. And yet maybe they would be inclined to ask somebody, hey, how'd you do that? How'd you join those boards together? What tooling did you use? And then the guy goes, after using that information, that there's something wrong with us, that every time there becomes a relational type of barrier, we just tend to, again, just swirl these thoughts in our mind. And we need that group of men like you're talking about, Larry, to be that sounding board to help us diagnose the problem.
Yeah, we are definitely the average of the 5 people that we spend the most time with.
Yeah.
And I mean, I have like my bros, right, from college
Hmm.
that we hang out, we just, go watch the game, that kind of thing, which is cool. I appreciate those relationships. But I've been walking through some challenging times with my 12-year-old over the past year, and
Hmm.
nothing serious, nothing crazy. But when I need real time advice on, like, "Hey, I am losing the connection with this kid. I can tell he doesn't open up to me. I'm not necessarily, I need to know, what can I do better to profoundly connect with this kid so
Hmm.
I don't lose that connection with him." Will you ask questions like that on mastermind sessions, or even in our group, or when men are ready and they're cued and they're ready to receive questions like that, man, they're ready for answers for you.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's so darn simple. It's right there in front of you, but you couldn't see it. And that is what's made all the difference in the world.
Have you found that and I don't want to betray any trust with the men in the mastermind. So, and I don't know any of them. So I'm just saying this just as an overarching question. Have you found that the men in the mastermind, they actually are more inclined to listen than those who aren't, because they're already investing in the process of becoming better men?
Listen to each other.
Yeah, yeah. In not only listen, but also kind of lower the wall a little bit. So we're listening and sharing, and then willing to apply what another man would say to us.
Oh, completely. The reason for that, I think, is because every guy who does life with us, I mean, they're humble, they're hungry, they have emotional intelligence. We don't even waste time with the small talk. To us, that's boring.
Hmm.
Like, "Hey, man, how's work going?" Pff, no. "Hey, dude, how's your marriage?
Yeah.
Like, how's that going?" Like, "Hey, man, like last time we talked and you were on a mastermind session last week, you shared with us that your son is, smoking weed.
Hmm.
Like, how's how's the conversation with him going? You asked for our advice on conversations with him. How did that go?"
Hmm.
things like that, man. We don't even waste time on the small talk. We get right to the heart.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, you talked about your son being 12, and I was reminded of actually something that was happening with my son years ago. He's 23 now, and we got to a crisis about the middle school age, near about where your son is, and in that same time frame anyway. And I was just feeling this disconnect. He was pushing back. I think I was pushing back. We'd been really, really close when he was younger. I didn't know what to do, but there was somebody who I went to, and he was much older. He's 30 years older than me, and I went to him and just asked him the question. I said, "There's," and he raised a son, and the son's productive, and both of them, doing great, have great families, and or have proven to have great families over the years. And I just said, "What is it?" And he told me a story, and he told me a story about a time where he was actually with his son near about the same time, and they were basically losing connection with one another. And he said that he just went to his son and he said, "What is something you'd like to do?" And his son said, I think he was building a go-kart. He's like, I really want to build a go-kart. He says, "We're going to build a go-kart together." And all of a sudden, that go-kart became the very thing that reconciled the relationship. He told me this story, and I was thinking, whoa, I was wanting my son to be interested in what I wanted him to be interested in, instead of me taking an interest in what he was already interested in. And I didn't sit and listen long enough to hear it until my friend told me that, and I was like, whoa, I realized what I did wrong. So that's proof of concept, even what you're talking about on the mastermind level, but also just on the individual level.
I think you said something there that really resonates with your audience, and that is, sharing time with your kids with what they're interested in.
Hmm.
That makes all the difference. Because to be honest, if you really ask yourself as as a dad, like, whatever this thing we're about to go do, is it really that important to you that you do that thing?
Mm.
Or if you really boil it down to the nuts and bolts of what it is it just the fact that you want to connect and spend time? If you just want to, if the answer to that question is yes, I just want to spend time and connect, then who cares?
Right.
Like, I have my 13-year-old plays saxophone, and there is not a musical bone in my body, but I just started playing guitar.
Hmm.
Well, let me rephrase that. I just started taking lessons, and I'm trying to play guitar.
Hmm.
And there's a part of me that's just like, oh, man, I have no patience for it, because I'm like, I just want to learn how to play a song like this. This is too coordinated for me. But I don't care, because 15 minutes every night before he goes to bed, he plays saxophone, and I attempt to practice. And to me, I'm like, I don't care if I learn how to play Mary Had a Little Lamb or not. Like, I get to hang out with him
Yeah.
for 15 minutes at the end of the night. And that's the kind of stuff, like, he can yuck it up and laugh at his old man for not being able to play because he is ridiculous on his saxophone. Like,
Hmm.
he's awesome. And he just laughs at me because I suck. But that's okay. I'll take it, just to hang out with him.
Yeah, dad's human and he has limitations. Wow. And I don't say that in jest. I say that seriously, because when we actually show that vulnerability, even in those ways with our kids, and then it just lowers us from being on this tower and being on our kids' level. And they need that. They need that connection. It's interesting you said that, because part of the journey with me being a dad is I was trying to have my son to be interested in the things that I wanted him to be interested in. I was interested in the norm. I consider it the normal American sports, and I realize that I'm going to get some pushback from people who listen to this, but football, basketball, baseball, like those normal things. And I thought, well, I was interested in those. I would love to play with play with him in the yard doing those things. So let's get him into those. He didn't want any part of those. He chose other things that turned out to be better for him. He chose wrestling. He chose wrestling. He chose cross country. He was on the state cross country team, the state championship team 2 years in a row. Like, he was a great runner, and it was instead of me being mad because, oh, all of a sudden I wanted to go throw the baseball with my son. And he's like, no, I think I'm going to do these other things. All of a sudden, even the drive, being able to connect, you said that you mentioned that, just connecting with him, even on the drive to these events. So I would make it a point to get off work early. I would go in early so I could get off work early or put in the hours. And then I would take this drive and he and I would drive to these sporting events, just he and I. It was an amazing, those years were fantastic,
For
but that I
sure.
had to make that priority.
Right. Exactly. You got to make that a priority.
And it was the connection. So to me, it was the sports were great, but that connection on the way to the sports was even better. Well, I had mentioned the 5 dimensions of your work. So I want to jump into those, give you a chance to speak into those a little bit. And they actually resonate pretty much with the 4 pillars of my work. The 4 pillars of my work are rooted in intellect, physical strength, spiritual maturity, and then relational integrity or relational growth. And I know that your dimensions have connections there too. So I'll give you a chance to speak into those.
Yeah. So the 5 dimensions that we've really identified for men and fathers, the things that are really circling our minds and souls and spirits at all time is, and it's 5 dimensions that we get the least amount of education on in
Hmm.
life. One of those dimensions is mastering your finances.
Hmm.
I just did a rite of passage with my boys, 12 and 13, and we hiked up a 14,000-foot mountain
Wow.
together
It's
in
awesome.
Brecken. It was cool. And I wrote them a letter, and the mountains signified the end of them being a boy, and that was the top peak journey of being a boy. And then on the way down, that's the beginning stages of them being a man.
Excellent.
And there were 7 pillars of going from boyhood to manhood. And one was, um, the one was, um, you have to learn money management. That was one of them. And we're not taught that growing up. We're
Mm-mm.
not taught that growing up, and that is unfortunate. So, mastering your finances is one. Optimizing your health, and that's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health.
Mhm.
Also, creating a legendary marriage. There's 4 pillars to that.
Mm.
Um, Also, connection with your kids, and then business.
Mm. So after connection with the kids, the fifth one you said is business.
Correct.
Cool. Cool. Yeah, I of my work, and then I was reflecting upon these, and I'll touch on these as well in my work. But uh, the one that stood out to me as far as health, the mental, intellectual, and spiritual, those realms. I believe it was the second one for you. Why do men sidestep their own health?
I don't really know. I think that's I mean, couple reasons, right? Anytime a man uh, does anything outside of work or spend
Hmm.
time with family, there's a tremendous amount of guilt that's usually associated with that.
Hmm.
So if a guy wants to play like a beer league softball once a
Hmm.
week, man, there's guilt, and if there's, I mean, name it, if it's outside the realm of work and family, guilt. As far as health goes, I think life gets more complex. It gets harder. It gets, it's a little bit more sticky and crazy, right? And
Hmm.
I think one of our pleasures in life is kind of eating what you want, drinking alcohol, right? I mean, that's not
Hmm.
bad. In fact, I love that stuff too, right? But the one thing that I think there's also a social stigma that men who are fit and take care of themselves are self-centered and egotistical and for lack of a better word, like douchebags.
Yeah.
That's not the case, at least not for me and the majority of guys that I know.
Yeah.
Like, to me, health and fitness. So I'm 45, and I'm probably in the best shape I've been in, and I'm in better shape now than I was in college and high school. And I think the reason for that is, for me, it's not because I want to look a certain way. I mean, to me, that's like a bonus and a benefit. For me, it is mental, emotional, and spiritual. It is therapy for me. If I don't have that in my life, I have no way of getting out stress. Like, to me,
Mhm.
the gym is all about, like, let me disconnect from everything and everybody who needs something from me, push around some heavy weight, do some things that make me sweat so I can feel better, and then come back and show up more profound for my business, for my kids, for my family. And and not to mention, I mean, having 4 boys, man, you've got to have energy to keep up
Oh,
with that. I mean, otherwise it's a mess. I
mhm.
want my kids to remember their dad actually playing with them, and to be, if I'm being really real, that's where I have so much opportunity to be better and to grow, because, like, with the little kids, it's hard for me to play like Legos and stuff. Like, I don't mind Legos, but like some things are just hard for me to play.
Mhm.
Like, I like to get outside and throw the ball around and that kind of thing. I like to do fitness stuff with my kids, go on hikes, but they don't necessarily like doing that. Like, I have such an opportunity to improve, to play, but I need to have the energy to do that stuff. And
Mhm.
if I don't, that's a disservice. So a lot of guys think, well, it's um it's a disservice if I'm spending time away from the gym because time away from family. But the thing is that your family doesn't want, like, the 50% of you, the overwhelmed. So here, I'll explain this as if it was me. Um, if I don't go and take care of my fitness, take care of my health, eat a decent, clean diet, I tend to get more irritable, probably more depressed. I feel terrible, which wears on my patience, which wears on me getting quicker to anger. And it's not a pretty sight. And a lot of guys, there's a part of me is like, well, it's selfish taking an hour for myself, every day to do that. But I would rather give my kids 3 hours of the good me, like the one who's like ready for them, like ready and willing to, like, yeah, let's freaking get our hands dirty and let's have
Mhm.
fun and, like, let's, versus 4 hours of me feeling like total crap.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that makes total sense too. It's like, it's almost like it is the guilt. You said it, and I think you nailed it. They feel guilty for not being there because one of the core principles that a man is supposed to do is to work. And it's good for a man to work. It's good for him uh, in every way. It's good for him physically, spiritually, intellectually, all of those, the problem solving, all that is good. But yet, I think that we can get so ingrained and maybe even into our head, and we think, well, I have to work and I have to produce instead of uh, withdrawing, going to the gym, and realizing that you're actually going to show up better if you get out of production mode of I have to produce and I have to work and I have to do all these things. Instead, if you actually go to the gym, you're going to show up better in all the other areas that matter the most. I mean, if you know, I love doing what we're doing right now, but if I show up huge and in a great way in this podcast, and this podcast, goes viral and it's just crazy, but I'm a lousy husband and father, I failed. I mean, I have failed. I don't care how many accolades come in and awards given. I mean, to me, the main three people that I have to answer to on planet Earth is my wife and my two kids. So, and I just want to just hopefully inspire you men out there to think about that too. You only have so much time to show up big in your marriages, in your relationships, in your friendships, and in the just the connection points as a dad. So you have to seize those moments when you can and be wise about it. You're not superhuman. So you have to pour into yourself by going to the gym, to clearing your mind, just like what Larry said. So then you can go out and you can show it big in other ways as well.
Amen to that, brother.
We're talking about connecting with kids. And one of the things that I've ran into, I've needed help with this. I still need help with this because you know what, man, kids always change. They always change. So just when you got something figured out, like they get older, they get mature, the hormones. or they move out. So then your relationship as a dad, that's the world I am in with my son. It's like everything changed. So I know that is an issue. And I was just hoping that you'd be able to talk to some dads, to maybe give them some tips on how to connect with their kids. And the reason why I say it is this, because the tendency from the guys that I'm around is to wait until their kids get older and say, well, and I know that you also I thank you for saying that. You just mentioned that you kind of struggled through this too. So a lot of guys, they kind of wait, well, when my kids are older, when they can go out and play or they can go do things, that's when I'll be involved. But they're a toddler right now, and I just don't know what to do. So I'll just let my wife do that. How would you help equip and encourage a guy to get involved at all stages of being a dad?
So yeah, let me actually, I'll lean into the first question, which is how to connect better with your kids. The quality of our life depends on the quality of the questions we're asking ourselves and those
Mm-hmm.
around us.
Yeah.
So the way to connect with your kids, I think you have to become a student of being a good communicator.
Hmm.
And what does that look like? So my default, I just had my son, my 13-year-old, walk in from school, and my first default question that I want to ask him is like, "How's school?" And what do you think I'm going to hear?
It's
Fine.
good.
It
It's
was
fine.
good.
It's
Yep,
good.
fine, good. So no,
Conversation's over. Thanks for asking.
exactly. So here's what I can tell you. Here's some parameters if you want to create connection. The first 15 seconds of any interaction will dictate the energy of the next 45 minutes
Mm.
with that person, that room, or whatever. So like if my 13-year-old comes in my office and I have my head down, I'm like, "Hey man, how's school?" "It's good." "Cool. Um, everything okay? Everything good?" "Yeah." But like if he comes in my office and I stand up and like I kind of like I'm being animated here. Your audience can't see, but if I like put my
Mm-hmm.
hand out for him to kind of give me a high five and I bring him in for a hug, be like, "What's up, man? Dude, like, what was the best part of your day? Tell me."
Mm.
Like, and he lights up, like, and then he's excited, like, "Oh man, like I got accepted to jazz band today. Like I got to play. I asked if I could do a solo. Dude, that's awesome, man. So what happens if you get this solo? Like, that sounds really cool." Like just being able to connect with him like that versus disengage. So like, being prepared with a good question, bringing good energy, to
Mm-hmm.
those interactions, because that's what, I mean, 93% of our 93% of our communications in our body language.
Right.
So we can ask really good questions, be like, what was the best part of your day today? Okay, cool. It's not nearly as
Yeah.
profound.
In all of your body language and even in your verbal language is saying, make the answer short because I felt obligated to ask it. So they're going to give you the obligatory, fine, good, moving on to the next thing. What's for dinner? I
Right.
mean,
Exactly.
instead of actually connecting in, you know, in that way, but then also, man, I love that uh, what you just said, and you showed me, but you told the audience of just kind of bringing them in, give them a high five, whatever, shaking their hand, doing something kind of like getting that physical touch. It just shows, hey, I'm going in for it, and I'm so glad you're here. That's what that conveys. I am glad you're here. You've been gone
Exactly.
all day, and I have missed you. I mean, to me, that's what that picture, shows me is I missed you, man. I'm so glad you're here, and then they're going to be inclined to maybe reciprocate that when you come home, when you're gone and then they're at home, maybe they reciprocate that because of that modeling. And I'll tell you, that's a pretty awesome thing too. And I miss that as my kids are getting older. I miss my kids running at me. This is a picture that I have longed for, that I've wanted to have happen. I mean, even before I was a dad, when we were newly married, I just couldn't wait until I would open the door and my family would welcome me at the door because they wanted me to be there.
Love it, man. Yeah.
And that's so much, I think, what you were modeling, in that too, is just that welcome. Hey, welcome home, you know?
Exactly. Yeah.
And, we don't have time, but part of my story, really the big part of my story and why I got into helping men in the way that I do is because of some brokenness in my childhood that is very similar to yours. So maybe that'll be part two up the road. I don't know, but that's been one of those things that is just etched in me, and in that picture of me coming home and wanting to be that emotionally and relationally connected to my family, that they would notice when I was not there and they would welcome me home when I got there. So as we get ready to wind this down for today, I want to ask you this question. What are some tips that you would give to the dads out there who want who want to communicate well with their wife? Because the
Uh,
core of raising kids is in the relationship with the wife if you're married. So,
Yeah. So I think it's always super important to constantly be a student of your wife
mhm,
at all times. So, what does that look like? I think it's very easy to get on the drift when it comes to the relationship with your wife, to get on autopilot.
mhm,
Don't ever do that. I've known my wife for 23 years. We've been married for 16 years. We have probably the best friendship right now. We have the best partnership. We each know each other's roles, what the other person does,
mhm,
what the other person's strengths and gifts are when it comes to those roles and why we do them. We also take time to take care of ourselves. So she works out every day. I work out every day. We do things that feed us, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and then we're having the best sex we've ever had.
mhm,
And I think that's because those other three things that I mentioned are all taken care of. And so my thing is that I I mean I could really get in the weeds on this one, but I think for a man to constantly be attractive to his wife, you have to bring a certain amount of masculine energy to that relationship. And when I say that, people are probably thinking of like stoic, beards, tough,
mhm,
all that, right? And that's not necessarily it. I think part of being masculine is giving her time and space to feel what she's feeling, because women are just feelers way more than men, and you got to give her time and space to not fix it.
mhm,
You have to, like, so for instance, if my wife came to me and been like, hey, I'm really frustrated today. The kids are in horrible moods. Like, Mason did that. Lawson did this. Colton did this. Just, oh my God. Like, all right. Right. And I immediately, there's that part of me that's just want to be like, gosh, why are you so upset about it? Like, you should have just grounded them, or you should have just taken away PS4. Like, why are
right,
you so upset? Now I'm like, man, it sounds like you're really frustrated. I can totally see why. Last week when you were gone, they were driving me absolutely insane. They were fighting, they were doing this. I literally wanted to pull my hair out. So I get it. I get where you're at. How can I best support you right now? What feels best? You need to get out. You need to go for a run. I'll help you at dinner. I got you. What do you need?
game
Yeah.
changer.
Yeah. Yeah. You just ask, right? You just ask questions versus like, so I think being tactically empathetic to your
Mhm,
wife's feelings and giving her space. The other thing too is, you know, understand her love language. That's something that's so easy
mhm,
and misunderstood. A lot of people don't even know what their own love language is. Find out.
mhm,
You can Google 5 love languages test. You can take the test. She can take the test. It will give you 80% more clarity in your relationship. Most people will love the other person in their own love language. So I'm physical touch and words of affirmation. So I compliment the heck out of my wife and I touch her all
mhm,
the time. she's acts of service and quality time. So when I'm
And she's
touching
saying, why are
her,
you touching me?
right, if I'm touching her, she thinks I have an agenda, even if I don't have an agenda.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm not being loving to her. I'm just another male that needs something from her. And I'm like,
Mm.
and I'm just like, no, I love you. And, so if I really want to make her feel loved, it's helping her with dinner. It's doing the dishes. It's cleaning up while she's cooking, that way we don't have to clean up anything after, the thing. It's like helping her with the chores on Saturday. It's her being like, hey, do you mind if I go out with my girlfriends? I'm like, no, get out, be with your girlfriends. Like,
Mm.
we got this. Things like that, just really understanding each other's love language. Dating your wife is another one. You've got to go out on dates. The minute you stop going on dates, you might as well just kiss the connection goodbye, because people can be in the same space, in the same room, and binge watching the same Netflix episodes, but they're not there. They're not
Right.
connecting. They're with each other. They're in the same space, but they're not sharing quality time. Get your wife out. If you're on a budget, there's a gazillion things you can do that's free or low cost, but get her out of the house, get her away from those kids,
Yeah.
and just enjoy each other. The other thing too is be prepared on those dates. If you Google top 50 questions to ask married couples,
Oh man.
you will get a plethora of questions that you never even thought to ask. Like, tell me about your dream vacation. Where do you want to go and why?
Yeah.
I mean, just things like that. You put her in a totally different mind space of like thinking of like, oh my gosh, like I've always wanted to go to Paris. I've always wanted to see, oh, really? Well, what's got you most excited about that? Why do you want to go see Paris so
Yeah.
much? And then you're getting to know her all over again when you ask her questions that aren't the norm.
Yeah. That's super helpful. And another thing I would just add into that, if you're a student of your wife, you're going to know where she likes to eat. Just decide ahead of time. Don't put
Yeah.
the burden back on her. Be like, well, where do you want to go eat? I don't know. Where do you want to go eat? And then you got to get in that circular reasoning instead of just, you've already taken all the initiative to do the other things. Go just that one extra step and say, we're going to eat at this place.
They actually, I think a lot of guys view that as like, oh, I'm just like telling her what to do. Let me tell you, my wife, man, she really appreciates that because, and I've often wondered like, well, why does she like me to take the lead like that? I don't understand. Cause sometimes I don't like to be told where I'm going, but my wife is different. She's like, you have no idea how many decisions I have to make every day, every hour,
Yeah.
like every minute. Like I am just exhausted of another thing that I have to plan and I have to decide on. It would just be great just to show up and you tell me what we're doing. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, I can see why. So it's not insulting. It's not toxic masculinity if you plan everything out for them. Like you're
Right.
actually taking something off their plate.
Yeah. You're actually showing them, and you're showing them that you love them and you're loving them well
Right.
by being considerate. So,
You
yeah,
got
I
it.
think that's great. I think that many times that there's a caricature of a man that is kind of spread out, and that is the toxic version of masculinity. And then there's men of character, and those two are vastly different. And many times that stoic, bearded, whatever bro, whatever that thing is, that becomes really the issue. And people think, well, I need to be that to be the man. And then they wonder why their marriage has struggles, and they wonder why their sons turn out the same way, and why they're bullies, and why all of these things start to happen. And because of modeling that behavior. So, what I would hope to be said of me one day, whenever I'm laying flat out before an audience, that people are, before people who are there speaking over my life after I've just passed away, that they would say, wow, Chad Zook was a man of character.
Yeah, for sure, man.
And I'm sure that's the same thing for you. Well, Larry, we're going to wrap up this show. I just want to ask you to just share, what would be like the top 3 books that you think every dad should read, other than your book, because that's obvious.
It's funny you mentioned that because we're in the process right now of building a landing page. I think we have probably at least it's probably about 30%, 40% done. There's probably about 100 books on there, for 50 to 100 books. We're building a landing page right now on the website. It's actually in the nav bar as well. If you go to gooddadproject.com/books,
Mm-hmm.
you'll see every book from every guest that we've ever had. We'll probably spend another couple months building that, but it's got some awesome ones on there right now. We've been meaning to do that for quite some time. We're doing it now. I would say, without a doubt, the book that really spun me into a different orbit was Unbeatable Mind by Mark Divine.
Mm-hmm.
It was by far one of my most favorite books. The other book is Stop Doing That Shit. I don't know if this is a clean show or not, but it's the title of a book. It's not my title, but just repeating the title, by Gary John Bishop. It's basically ending self-sabotage. That's a great book. I mean, the title is meant to grab your attention, you know, but it's a great book. And the book is worth the entire last chapter, if you ask me. It is by far phenomenal. I would say the other book after that would probably be Wild at Heart, John Eldridge. I love that book. Those would be my top three.
Cool. Yeah, Wild at Heart has radically defined my life.
Yeah.
Chapters 3 and 4 of that book have been the most impactful chapters,
for sure,
of any other book that I've read. 3, 4, and 5, really. So, well, Larry, I appreciate you coming on to the podcast today. You have given us so much to think about and so much to do. We are a group of people who are set out to become better men, and to become better men, we have to apply the things that we're learning, and you've given us a lot to learn and to do. So we thank you for that.
Appreciate it, brother. Thank you so much for the invite, and thank you for having me on.
Yeah. Is there any new work or anything that you want to plug, or even old work that you want to plug before we shut it down?
Yeah. You know, if I mean, we've got a plethora of resources out there. You know, we've got the Dad Edge book. We've got, the podcast is an arsenal of resources in and of itself. We're over 500 episodes now. You know, we've got a free Facebook group of just thousands of men all over the place, and I'm proud to say we monitor that group pretty darn closely. We've got hard rules in there that, hey, treat everyone with dignity and respect here, because, dude, it absolutely amazes me, like, to see, you know, a man post a question about, how do I better communicate with my wife? We're not sleeping together right now, and I don't know what's going on, to 15,000 strangers for input. And when you look at comments on a question like that, it's all heartfelt. And I think it's because we do a really good job of making sure that we're putting the right men in there.
Yeah.
You know, so the thing is, we were just like, hey, man, if you're going to be here in this group, like, no one says man up. No one says grow a set of balls. No one, you know, no one says anything like that. You know, like, just give these men true, you know, kind-hearted, you know, direction. If you're looking for more, we have our virtual mastermind, which we've got 375 guys who are part of that group. That's, you know, we've got 21 mastermind sessions per week that we do. Everything we do is virtual, so we use Zoom for everything. So it's every call team that we have, all 21 of them, is led by 2 people. We have a leadership team of over 40 people, and they're all trained facilitators. And what we basically do is we help men optimize those 5 dimensions I was talking about. You know, we have a set agenda that we focus on every month. It changes every month. It changes every week, actually. Like this month of February, we're doing the 4 elements of a legendary marriage, and every single week we're going over how to optimize each one of those. And, you know, the goal is that men get off these mastermind sessions and they truly have the tools and the community and the conversations and the strategy and the ideas. And they're also held accountable to take action every single week to go out and do something, you know, that they're not necessarily comfortable doing. Right. But that's to live this epic life that they truly want to live. Yeah. And that's what we do. But if you're looking for that, you can go to gooddadproject.com/alliance for that.
Awesome. Well, again, Larry, it's been fantastic having you on the show today. Really appreciate you and your time. Go Cardinals, right? Hopefully we'll do something this year. and maybe we'll connect later up the road. So thanks again. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
You as well, my friend.